This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.
Welcome to episode 26 of Paranormal Dads. I'm your co-host Andy.
I'm Pat.
And I'm Eddie.
Join us as we go in search of the world's monsters, myths, and mysteries, right here on Paranormal Dads. All right, boys, welcome back. It's been a while.
Again.
It has.
We've got a quarter century of episodes under our belt.
Yeah. 25 are behind us. On to the next million.
So it's been crazy, as always. I mean, our schedules never seem to slow down, but we're back better than ever. We got a really good one locked and loaded for you.
Yes. Like you said, you can't control life. Like the timing of things just happen sometimes. And the mark of any good parent, in my mind, is like you just got to react. Like you just got to be what you need to be at that moment. Basically you're Inspector Gadget. Like you just got to start yanking things out of your hat. And that's been all three of us the past month and a half or so.
Yeah, we put the dad in Paranormal Dad. What'd you say the other day? Your daughter got her key stuck in the car ignition and couldn't get it out?
Yeah, the car was running. And I argue the car was legit possessed. Like, the car was running. She couldn't get the key out. And I couldn't get the key out. And my first thought was, be careful not to break off the key. I broke off the key.
You broke off the
Snapped
key.
it right off in the ignition. So that was its own batch of craziness. And it's a teenager high schooler car, so it's going to have all sorts of weird little things wrong with it. But, as long as it can get her there safe, that's the big thing. But, yeah, that was our drama.
No. And then, Pat, you've been like a glorified taxi driver lately, trying to get your kids all over the place.
We've been getting around quite a bit. We've been to Kansas City for band events. We've been to Minneapolis for band events. Eddie's been to Minneapolis.
Yes, family vacation.
It's been a lot of traveling on the weekends, and it seems like you come home from a trip and you're just exhausted, and you go into another week of work, and it never ends. It's just rinse and repeat over and over again. But it's good to finally get together in the same room once again and try to knock out a couple of episodes and have some fun.
And Andy, you've been cranking out all sorts of special events and different galleries and all sorts of crazy.
Yeah, I've been busy with work. Over the week of Halloween, I did a kind of a ghost stories special event kind of presentation at my facility, and then but in the end, I know we get stressed, the family obligations and the time limitations and whatnot. What made it all worth it for me is my 4-year-old daughter was a hot dog for Halloween.
That's amazing.
So just head to toe hot dog outfit, mustard, bun, the whole 9 yards, and then her head just pokes right through the middle. And it was funny because everything she did on Halloween, because she wore her costume half the day at school and everything, but everything she did was more funny. It was funnier because she was wearing a hot dog outfit.
Exactly.
So there's a hot dog, eating lunch. There's a hot dog getting out of the car. It's just it was hilarious.
So the question is, did she have ketchup on her? The people in Chicago want to know.
She was a purist. No ketchup.
No ketchup on
Yes,
Yeah.
good.
Next year she's talking about being a slice of pizza. So there's a trend here.
I'm all for putting the ketchup on the hot dog.
You are?
I don't care. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You Americans.
Put it on.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of in the camp. I just like mustard and maybe some sauerkraut if I'm feeling crazy.
It's kind of like pineapple on pizza. You like it or you don't, and there's no in between, right?
Yeah.
But here we go talking about hot dogs and
We are
and
dads.
mustard. Yeah, we're dads. We're dads.
We just ate lunch, too.
Well, let's put the paranormal in Paranormal Dads, and we'll get into the first segment, which is always recent sightings.
Recent sightings. Recently, and I do mean recently, it was last year, so as recent as a year ago, Oumuamua, as it was named, was discovered by Robert Wyrick using the Pan-STARRS telescope at, I'm going to butcher this, Haleakala Observatory on October 19th, 2017.
Sounds Hawaiian.
In Hawaii.
I was going to say, that sounded very
In
Hawaiian.
Ohio.
In Ohio.
And so to give people kind of a breakdown who haven't heard of this thing, it has been dubbed the Cigar-Shaped Probe. It does not meant to sound a little risque, but it's shaped like a cigar, and it's floating in space. Not floating. I take that back. Not floating at all, in fact. So the fun things about this object were that it was from outside of our solar system. All meteors and comets, even though it seems like they don't come by very, like the ones that come by regularly, I think it's like Halley's.
Halley's Comet.
Isn't Hale-Bopp still a thing?
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, some of them have.
I don't know how often they come around, but
right.
Yeah, Hale-Bopp was a big one back in the 90s. That's
Yeah.
the one where they had that huge mass suicide in
Yeah.
California.
People decided to buy the same sneakers and go home.
Yeah, the purple shrouds and the Nikes.
Some of them are predictable, though, because Mark Twain was born when Halley's Comet was passing overhead, and then, 60, 70, 80 years later, he always claimed he was going to go out with Halley's Comet, and sure enough, he died when it was overhead again.
Yeah.
Right there at the end. So, but this thing came from outside the solar system.
It is the first observed object that is interstellar. It is outside of our solar system. They can tell this by its trajectory. They had not seen this thing coming before. There's no record of this having been observed. It came closer to us than the moon at one point.
Oh my gosh.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it had a trajectory unlike any other meteor or comet that these astronomers and astrophysicists have observed. It did not behave like any meteor or comet recorded in human history. So here we go. Oumuamua is Hawaiian for messenger or scout. And right out of the gate, when they decided to name it, they called it that because it behaved in a way that you would, and I'm going to use the word assume, something that was gathering data would. It did basically it came around the sun and then, close as the moon, or maybe a little closer, kind of came by Earth and then did a return orbit back out again.
And the moon's close. I mean, in cosmic terms, it's really close. The moon is about 250,000 miles away.
We can get there in a matter of days.
Right. That's it. I mean, it's as close as a heavenly body can be to your planet. So that thing was really close.
Yeah, it was close. And to give you some fun little factoids about this thing, I even did a little sketch. Looks kind of like
a sketch.
Space
It
turd.
is very nice.
Space turd.
There was no trails or emissions. There was no gas being emitted from this thing.
So it doesn't have a tail.
No tail. Nothing broke off of it. Like pieces, typically with a meteor or a comet, you will see chunks of ice or methane or other stuff breaking off of it as it goes and does its passes. This thing had nothing like that coming off of it. As it was doing its trajectory, it at one point sped up, which people are wondering if it wasn't a gravity assist from the sun. But then the counter argument was that's how you would do that if you were doing a probe. You would use the gravitational kind of slingshot. The dimensions of this thing get kind of weird. So it's hundreds of meters long.
Okay.
But they're estimating that it's a millimeter thin.
That doesn't make any sense.
A millimeter thin.
Millimeter thin. And that
That doesn't make any sense.
No.
The more you read about Oumuamua, the weirder it gets. The thinking that it might be some sort of, this is the people who are saying that it's like an alien construct, that it would be some form of like a sail, like a solar sail, like a basically picture like a solar energy panel floating through space.
Okay.
Those are its dimensions. And I think there is some debate on its thickness because that's really thin.
That's really thin.
So how
fingernail thin.
Okay, so that's as thin as a fingernail.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm not up to date on my,
your metrics.
My metrics.
Yeah, you're talking probably about as thick as maybe like 3 or 4 playing cards.
That's crazy. And then, but the length of a couple football fields.
Yeah, hundreds of meters long.
That's crazy.
So when they say hundreds, I'm thinking it's about 700 feet,
Okay.
800 feet long.
Okay.
So not football fields, not yards, but certainly 200-300 feet.
Sure.
So let me see here. Some fun facts about this thing. It came so close to the sun that it should have emitted some form of gas. Because the heat of the sun, the gravitational pull, it should have done something to it. Nothing like that happened to it. It retained its structural integrity. It consisted of minerals and alloys that are not found in our solar system, which anything that comes out from interstellar is going to bring with it things that don't live in ours. But just another piece of evidence that this thing is not from
Around here.
Wow.
It seemed to have a strange organic coating around it. There was like a thin coating, and the reason, and I was kind of like, how would they like break that down? How would they know about the coat, this coating on it? And the reason they figured that out was because the astrophysicists and astronomers who were studying this thing felt like there was evidence of ice inside this thing, but there was a coating around it that prevented the ice from leaving. And so the people who were arguing that it may be a probe were, if you were to travel through space and you needed some form of either liquid coolant or you needed water for whatever populace that thing was providing water to, you would want to coat it in a membrane that would prevent that water from escaping.
Interesting.
A giant, like a water tank. It sped up as it passed through our solar system with no loss in its shape or size. Nothing ejected or broke off of it. And a few other fun little factoids. Let's see here. They felt like the people who study these things, these astronomers and astrophysicists, its shape and design, quote-unquote design, would be of one that is ideal for interstellar travel, they said. Something that is long enough but thin enough that would avoid collisions with other things. And then lastly, before we get into our discussions here, fun fact, this object is similar to an object that was written about in the fictional novel Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke, in which a cylindrical alien spaceship enters our solar system. And the scientists in that story also were like, it's a comet, it's a meteor, it's not a ship, and it ended up being a ship. Not saying that proves that, but it's just funny how, once again, kind of like the synchronicity stuff comes into play with that. But
Like
there you go.
life imitating art.
Exactly. Or another Matrix moment, like he kind of tapped into something. There's way more to this thing than just what I wrote down. And the big thing about it was that it was not emitting a signal. And that's what I feel like a lot of the mainstream scientists are dialed in on. Like, it wasn't an alien ship because either A, we think that's stupid, or B, it wasn't emitting a signal. The people who are saying that this thing is behaving so oddly, you can't leave that off the table. And obviously, if this was a data gathering device, you're not going to just start screaming to the people who you're monitoring, "Hey, we're here."
Right.
That's just ridiculous. So it's just funny. So let's discuss.
Well, and especially if they want to observe us or study us without interfering. Like there's marine biologists who go out into the ocean to study sharks or whales or dolphins or whatnot, and ideally you don't want to disturb them.
Yeah.
You just want to blend in, and you want to take your measurements and get your data. You don't want to necessarily jump on the shark's back and ride it, or
Right.
make yourself too obnoxiously present. But wow, I read some information about that prior to this recording, and I had no idea it was so thin. That's
thin.
insane.
I've seen some, like you said, sketches and things of this thing, and
The sketches make it look like it
makes it look pretty substantial.
It's thick,
right?
When I read that millimeters thin, I was like, that's like a razor blade,
Yeah.
like a geo, those like geode coasters floating through space. What they described it as, the people who think it's an alien construct think it would be like a solar sail.
Solar.
Yeah.
like almost a piece of cloth, like a rigid membrane that's whole purpose is to gather solar energy to propel a smaller craft. The idea being, and this is where my kind of conjecture was happening, where you probably, if this is a solar sail, it would be probably pulling a much smaller object that you may not even be able to detect with like a 2-man ship that are behind it. You know, literally like a little tiny pod that wouldn't even show up on those things. That's what I was thinking as I was reading this. Like, this seems like, and if it did have water in it, it would just have a supply line going to that pod, giving those guys some sustenance.
I got a couple things to say. You know, first of all, if this is alien technology of any kind, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could still have, more powerful technology in something as thin as a razor.
Right.
And it could be a more powerful computer than we have here on Earth that could fit inside of a room. Right. Secondly, it almost makes sense to have a razor thin craft or vessel of any kind. You're out in space, you got asteroids, meteors. Some of them are, even one the size of a grain of sand can rip a hole through a space shuttle if it hits it, at the right velocity. So I guess being that small minimizes the chance that it would get destroyed or hit by things in outer space.
Right.
Think of it. You put an object 20 yards away. You put a bowling pin and you put a razor on its edge, which is going to be easier to hit with a baseball.
Right.
Yeah. If it's thin, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right?
The dimensions were hundreds of meters long, tens of meters wide, and millimeters thick.
Gotcha.
And you're probably talking about a civilization, if you can accept that. That probably has technology far beyond what we can even comprehend. I mean, you look at what some of the stuff we're producing now. I actually work with hard drives now that are the size of what most people would know as the size of a memory stick.
Yeah.
That you would normally put in a computer. Now we're getting hard drives that look like the same thing.
Wow.
They're that thin, they're that small, and they're super fast.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're evolving in our technology.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they're out there exploring the heavens, even beyond what we're doing, they're going to have something that's beyond what we're going to imagine.
Yep. My thought is, just like what you said, this is not. There aren't aliens on board this thing.
Right.
I don't even know if it's something that's being powered. I don't know if it is pulling like a sleigh. If it's pulling a smaller pod, I think if anything, it's just a data gathering device.
Right.
That is embedded with all this crazy sensors and technology. That its job is to do a slow pass around a planet and then go back and report all the stuff it gathered.
It's really mind blowing to fathom is let's assume that this is not from around here, and it's an alien information gathering probe of some kind.
Sure.
There is a very good chance that the civilization who launched that into space is no longer alive.
Yeah.
Because that thing could have been floating around for 50 million years, a billion years.
Yes. I mean,
longer than the species. The species might not be around anymore.
Right.
And ditto for us, we have, what was it, Voyager?
1 and 2.
Okay, so those have been going, and I think those just recently left our
They've
solar
been going
system.
for what, 30, 40 years?
40, longer than that even.
They left our solar system. I almost said they left our
solar system.
Yeah, our solar system.
And it took, and that thing's moving. That is the fastest vessel that human beings have ever made because it will continue to slowly gain speed out there in space.
Yeah.
But that thing's going to keep going forever.
Yeah.
And probably longer than the human species will be around. So, in 5 million years, humans might not be around anymore, but that thing will be.
That's a good point.
So, yeah.
Very good point. Yeah, and this is one of those things where it is a classic paranormal thing. There's enough going on that it piques your interest. It keeps you engaged. And for the people, and I was telling Pat this pre-recording, that's the part that triggers me so much, where people dismiss it. They had another scientist on American television, and the scientist, basically, they were very careful to close the segment with, it's a meteor. Mm-hmm. And they're like, but it's not behaving like one. Yeah, it's a meteor still. It's not from aliens. And then at the end of the segment, they began to make jokes.
Right.
And
they
I was
always
like,
do.
just the notion of like, we got to return to the status quo. We got to make sure, and I'm like, but if you take that off to the side and just read the articles, and these are articles from legitimate astrophysicists. This isn't something off of like...
Was it Harvard? Was it Harvard?
It was a Harvard study at
Right.
one point. And one of the people from that Harvard study was like, there's not enough data to take off the table that this is potentially some sort of alien probe.
Right.
And just like what you said, that doesn't imply anything other than that there's somebody who built this, who sent it off to gather data, and it's just doing its job. Right. And just like a pool cleaner, like those pool vacuums that you throw in there. That's right. There's nobody guiding that thing. It's just doing what it's designed to do. So my camp, I was squarely on the like, this has way more pointing to it being not a meteor or a comet than a meteor or comet. So I'm so excited.
And it's not from our solar system.
No, it's
the
interstellar.
First object ever. So I don't know. You throw all this together. I'm leaning towards but I'm a huge UFO nut. But I'm cautiously optimistic. But I don't know. I'm hopeful about this one. The sad thing is I don't know if we'll ever have enough data to conclusively say either way. But I'm leaning towards it. It could be could have been launched by an intelligent civilization once upon a time.
Unless you want to take it to a dark place, and this thing is actually loaded with like all sorts of like biomes and like spores, and it just makes a hard pass by a planet like ours, and just releases all of this submicrobial stuff we can't even see.
A bunch of robots the size of fleas just rain down on our planet.
Exactly. Or like little tiny like mutant like animals, and all they need is water, like sea monkeys that become like kraken sized.
Eddie's really thought about it.
He's really thought about that.
It keeps me up at night. But yeah, I encourage anyone to look up Oumuamua and all the stuff that came around with it, and it's just a really fascinating read. There was a giant object that visited us for funsies. And
Giant razor blade.
Giant razor blade that looked like a turd. Probably not, but super exciting.
Yeah. Well, good work, Eddie. Aloha.
It's time for pop, culture, and the paranormal.
Nightmares.
Ooh.
Fact or fiction?
Fact, because I just got done with my work week.
Well, when you're talking about toys, there is actually a toy line by that name. And it's a company called Toy Vault, and they are putting out a series of dolls that feature paranormal-themed dolls. And we've kind of talked about, there's the Barbie line we've talked about before. But these are kind of like little plush dolls, very cool looking. And they've got a series of them. One of them includes the Mothman. The other one is Voodoo Doll.
Ooh.
So it's literally the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah, I wonder if it comes with pins too.
It does.
There's one called Bloody Mary, which I didn't even realize was like a paranormal thing. I thought it was a drink, right?
Right, right.
No, but the legend of Bloody Mary has been a figure of American myth for decades. However, many people don't realize Bloody Mary was a real person.
Oh.
Her name was Mary Worth.
Of course.
She was a beautiful, vain young woman, was killed violently in a car accident in the early 1960s. And her face was horribly disfigured in the accident. Thus, the legend began. And, this is kind of weird because it says she was killed in the accident, but it said Mary was so angry over her mutilation, she swore to destroy all who called to her through the thing she loved the most, a mirror. And so... are the abundant mirrors of the world simple sheets of glass, or does Mary wait patiently behind the reflective surface? So we sow the words, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
Oh, he said them 3 times.
I remember.
So I guess he's saying it 3 times. And,
Yes, that's
and
the
Mary
myth.
appears.
That's the story.
I
man.
remember being at a sleepover when I was about 12 or so, and of course that, my buddy that, and I was kind of skittish of...
Did you do it?
I didn't do it, but my buddy did. He went up to the mirror, in the basement, which basements are inherently creepy anyway.
Right.
Yeah, he probably said it like 24 times. He wasn't, nothing happened obviously, but I was on edge and I was kind of ready for anything. But yeah, it's one of those things, rite of passage, I think, for a lot of kids.
I've never done it.
But no.
I've never had the stones to do it. I've gone in there like, I'm going to do it. No.
Well,
Bloody Margaret.
Bloody Martin.
Bloody Manny.
I just want to go on the record to say there are no mirrors in this room right now.
No, thank goodness.
Even though I said the words, it doesn't count.
This is my plasma TV.
It kind of is like a
That's
mirror.
TV.
I have my back to it. If you guys see a figure in there, let me know.
If I see a face in that TV, I'm going to jump out the window.
What are some of the other toys, Pat?
There's another one. It's a chupacabra. Ooh. A little chupacabra plush. So they're kind of cute.
Are they cute? How could the Bloody Mary one be cute, though, is my question.
Well, she's not so cute.
Yeah.
But, you can look at Chupacabra there. He almost kind of looks like almost a pterodactyl.
Yeah, I like Chupacabra.
Looking thing. He's kind of cool.
I want the Mothman. I'm sold on the Mothman.
Speaking of chupacabras, my 4-year-old daughter, she was talking about chupacabras on the way over here, boys.
Nice.
We were at a gas station, so I could stop and get my pop, and there was a big advertisement billboard sign thing in the parking lot of Camel cigarette brand. So there's Joe,
Okay.
is it Joe Camel or whatever?
Yeah.
And she I didn't see it initially, and she says, "Dad, is that a chupacabra?"
Yes.
only our daughters, right?
Exactly.
And so I
hilarious.
can't figure out what she's talking about. And finally I see the camel, and
Joe
I mean,
Camel.
what do you mean, that brown camel? And she said, yeah, it's a chupacabra because it's brown, and I didn't know what it was.
It's brown. I didn't know
I
what it
said,
was.
sweetie, that's a camel.
That is so
And
funny.
then I thought of Hump Day. Mike. Hump Day.
I love her decision making matrix where it's like, it's brown. I don't know what it is.
It's a chupacabra.
I just love to sit in her classroom
Oh, yeah.
during classroom discussions, and when she brings this stuff up.
Yeah, and she does. She talks about Bigfoot just openly to anyone who will listen. It's great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So these are called, it's the toy chest?
It's the Toy Vault.
Toy Vault.
You can go to toyvault.com, and this is the Nightmares Factor Fiction line. And the Voodoo Doll just kind of looks like a little rag doll
Yeah.
with stitches on the arms, and the promotional picture shows somebody jamming a needle into the side of one of them.
That's...
It's kind of interesting. They have a little story about each one of these. And they were talking about the practice of sticking pins in dolls or puppets actually had its history in European folk magic, not the Haitian religion of voodoo.
Oh, okay.
Over time, the practice evolved and became a method of cursing individuals with pain and suffering. Today, the voodoo doll has its roots in New Orleans voodoo, which is a form of hoodoo or southern folk magic. This evolution is believed to have stemmed from the slaves who used puppets to keep their superstitious owners at bay. In traditional voodoo, the puppet is nailed along with an old shoe to trees near graveyards to act as a messenger between this world and the next.
Oh, my.
This is not done for ill effect, as it is often portrayed in movies. So.
There's probably a voodoo doll of me that has a giant stack of work next to it.
And that's what you want to jam with a needle as the work.
Exactly. And bills.
I just remember there was an episode of Gilligan's Island when I can't remember really the storyline, but somebody had created voodoo dolls of every single person on the island. You know, there's a skipper, a Gilligan, a ginger, a professor, and somebody was, it must have been some kind of medicine man or something. I don't even remember the storyline.
Yeah.
But they were like sticking pins, and so all the castaways were having like these aches and pains, because
They were getting-
there's somebody doing voodoo on them.
There's a lot of that.
I wonder if the opposite could be true. So if you make a voodoo doll of somebody you like, can you give the little doll a shoulder massage, and then the person would feel it? Ooh, that's nice.
Make them feel better.
Where's that coming from? Yeah.
Roll up some money and tuck it in its pocket. Like, ooh, my bank account.
Bing! Where'd that 10 spot come from?
Do that, please, listeners. And then there's that Mothman doll has me interested in it right there.
I know what I'm getting you guys for Christmas now.
Paranormal Christmas, dude.
Yeah,
Mothman,
It's pretty cool.
Krampus.
Of course, the Mothman was first seen in West Virginia in the fall of 1966. Quickly became made its way into the annals of American myth. It's estimated to be 7 feet tall with large wings and eyes that burn red. And the explanations for this massive creature range from aliens to Native American curses to interdimensional beings. And so whatever its origin, it seems that catastrophe follows appearances of the Mothman, including, you look at the deadly bridge collapse in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which people claim to have seen the Mothman just before this bridge collapsed and a bunch of people died.
Yep.
I actually started watching that movie,
Yeah.
the Mothman Chronicles.
Yeah.
Mothman Prophecy.
Prophecy, yeah.
It is creepy.
Yeah.
Very creepy.
I got maybe halfway through, right? And I had to stop. And I went back. I found it like for free on demand on my cable. Went back the next day to finish watching it. And it must have been like a special thing because it was gone. No! So I'm halfway through. I didn't get to see the ending of
now
the
we know what to
movie.
get Pat for Christmas.
So I'm gonna have to go rent it now or something and finish watching it.
It's not the feel-good movie of the year. I mean,
No,
it's
it was
kinda,
pretty dark
it's
from the
dark
part
and
that I saw.
It's kind of slow-moving, but it is based on real events.
Was it Richard Gere?
Richard
Richard
Gere.
Gere's in it. I think it's from like the early 2000s, maybe.
Early 2000s,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good flick if you're looking for something spooky. I would say watch it during the day. It's not monsters jumping out and scaring you scary. It's just eerie, and it's very
Yeah, it was
creepy.
definitely a slow burn kind of thing
Yeah.
from what I'd seen so far. It was, a lot of weird things going on.
It's one that
you could tell
sits
that they
with
were
you.
building up to something.
Yeah. It sits with you for a while too. That's what I like about those. Like those slow burn ones that kind of build up. You kind of keep thinking about it days after. And Mothman is probably one of my favorite stories, like favorite myths,
Yeah.
hands down.
Well, and the people who claim to have seen that monster, a lot of them are still alive, and their story hasn't changed.
Right.
And they don't, they seem very genuine and very sincere. But, yeah, I don't know. It makes you wonder, would it bring any bad juju into your house to get one of these nightmare dolls,
I just,
Well, if you got a paranormal friend, Christmas coming up, this is one of the things that we'd have to stick in our paranormal Christmas survival guide.
That's got to make the list on the paranormal Christmas gifts.
We'll have to come up with that again this year.
There we go.
So once again, that's toyvault.com. Check out Nightmares from Fact or Fiction.
And now it's time for the main mystery.
All right, welcome to the main mystery. As you probably already know, we tend to rotate segments, and this week it was my turn to be on the main mystery, and I selected Men in Black. Not the movie, mind you.
Here come Men in Black.
But like you said earlier, Pat, a lot of times life imitates art and vice versa. So actually, a lot of people don't know that Men in Black movie, or movies, it's a series, but that started back in the mid-'90s with Will Smith, late '90s with Will Smith,
Late
and
90s, yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Three of them.
That is based off of a real phenomena. The Men in Black. It's not just a movie. It's a phenomenon of people who report witnessing UFO events. Primarily UFO events is what it centers around. So, a couple sees weird lights in the sky, and then the next day they're visited at a restaurant or at their home by gentlemen. 99% of the time it's men anyways, dressed in black suits, black sunglasses, black hat, driving a black vehicle with tinted out windows, who approach the eyewitnesses and in a very kind of threatening manner, they say, you didn't see anything and you're not going to talk about this or else.
And there's usually more than one.
There's usually more than
two
one.
of them or three.
They arrive mysteriously. They disappear suddenly. A lot of the reports are kind of empty threats because they never specifically say what will happen if you go to the news and share your UFO sighting.
Or else, see.
Yeah. But there has been a couple cases, documented cases of people who were visited by Men in Black, who told them, don't go public with what you saw. They did anyway, and then in the days or weeks that followed, the person's house was broken into and their computers and cameras were stolen that included the footage of their sighting. probably be a little tougher to do in today's world because most people who would capture something like that would upload it to social media.
Right.
So stealing their camera is not going to do a whole lot of good unless you can hack into their online account.
Steal their life.
But I'm on history.com here, just pulling some information. And some people think that the phenomena of Men in Black actually goes back to June 27th of 1947. And it all started, apparently, with a man, a boy, and a dog on a boat. And as the story goes, a man named Harold Dahl, D-A-H-L, Harold Dahl, was on a conservation mission on the Puget Sound near the eastern shore of Washington's Maury Island. And he was gathering logs and whatnot, and he saw 6 donut-shaped objects, whatever. They were hovering about a half mile above his boat. Before long, one of them fell nearly 1,500 feet, and that was followed by raining metallic debris, and some of that debris actually hit Harold's son, Charles, on his arm, and it also hit the family dog, who did not survive the ordeal.
Oh, wow.
So whatever this craft was, whatever it was raining down, it took the dog's life. That in and of itself is rather concerning. But Harold was able to take some pictures of the aircraft with his camera, and he later showed those photos to his supervisor, Fred Chrisman. And anyway, long story short, Chrisman went back to the scene to look for himself and saw the strange craft himself. But anyway, long story short, those gentlemen were visited by, apparently allegedly Men in Black who, told them that they didn't see anything. It's kind of what's weird about a lot of these Men in Black reports is the fact that not just that it's strange that random strangers dressed in black would come by and threaten you about what you saw. How would they know who saw what? If they weren't at the scene of the incident. Secondly, another odd thing is a lot of the Men in Black are reported to look from a different era. They look like they're dressed in like 1950s attire.
Yeah. Right.
Driving a what am I trying to think of? A black.
It looks like an old, like, Studebaker looking car.
Oldsmobile.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, with, black tinted out windows, and some of them have those kind of old-fashioned round-rimmed hats, from like the 1940s and 50s.
Right.
And, yeah.
I've even heard, like, facial features have been off with a lot of these guys. Like, they almost don't look human, or something odd about the way they physically appear. Their faces.
Some people claim that it actually looks like they're trying to imitate a human being. Like, they walk weird. Their pigment is off. There's some a lot of the reports actually claim that the Men in Black that approach them, it's hard to even pinpoint their ethnicity because a lot of them look like a blend. They have Asian-like features, but it's almost like they're a mix between Asian and African and Caucasian, and it's just hard to pinpoint because they just look different. They look unique,
I remember reading an account of a man who had an extended conversation with a Man in Black. It wasn't like anything where just came by and visited and was gone. In fact, I think at one point he had even like gone with him for a drive. This is where it's really hazy on me here, but bear with me. There was this account of this man that had an extended visit and talk with a Man in Black and came to the conclusion that this was an android. That this was not it was a humanoid being, but it was not a human. And after there was some more discussion, it was basically like, there are aliens here, and you'd be better safe. Like, it was almost out of concern, not out of like threat. Like, I like you, I don't want you to get hurt. Just don't make a big deal out of this. That was kind of the takeaway from the whole thing. But this guy had like extended talks with this entity that wore black and stuff like that.
This is one of those phenomena that to me, I think I didn't like the idea of the films coming out with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, because it was a big comedy and it was funny. And Men in Black, this is a very dark story. These guys are very creepy. Just kind of shocking to hear some of the stories that people tell about these guys. And so when the movie came out, I was kind of disappointed because it was just like, there's nothing funny about these guys,
Yeah.
They were, the movies kind of make light of it, but I think even Dan Aykroyd, the actor, has a story about being visited by men in black. He's one of the most outspoken, famous people who believe in different aspects of the paranormal.
Yep.
And I think he was either visited by the men in black, or he knows somebody very close to him was visited by men in black. Just creepy, scary stuff.
There's a documentary that came out a couple of years ago. It's called Extraordinary, and it's the Stan Romanek story. Now, it's a documentary. It was on Netflix. I'm not sure if it still is, but
I've seen that.
True story. Real guy. It's kind of a documentary on him. And since that documentary was released, he's had some pretty heinous legal charges against him. But the documentary kind of follows Stan over the course of a long time. He's telling stories that have been happening to him for decades. And one of the bizarre things that he shared, is kind of Men in Black-ish, was that he had a very bizarre experience, like close encounter, if you will, close encounter of the third kind, I guess it would be, maybe the fourth kind even. But there was a ruckus on the side of his house. He saw an alien being with his own eyes, and there was some sort of commotion. And long story short, there was a weird substance that was splattered against the side of his house that wasn't there, and he thought it was of alien origin. So a bizarre series of events unfolded in the days to come, and he was contacted by like a contractor of some kind, a guy who allegedly painted houses, or he was a handyman of sorts. He painted over that wall that had potential physical evidence of UFO, alien goo or goop or whatever the heck it was, biological fluid. And so he painted over that and left, and, Stan, I don't know if he needed to pay a bill or he wanted to call the guy for follow-up, but he tried to contact the company that had done the job, and the company didn't exist. Mm-hmm. In other words, somebody was trying to cover up the evidence on the side of his house.
Right. Right. That's an interesting story, and his stories, and then and the stuff that came out with him later was interesting. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, you can watch it if you want to and draw your own conclusions. For my money, it'll definitely give you goosebumps to hear some of those things. Whether you believe or not is up to you. But I actually brought special little treat.
Andy's busting out a book.
It's a book.
That thing looks all...
This is a new book, too.
It's with pages and everything.
It's got pages.
Yeah, so this thing's a beast. It's, 530-some pages. It's called the Mammoth Book of UFOs.
And there's no pictures either.
There's no pictures. It's all content. I mean, it's by Lynn Picknett, Mammoth Book of UFOs, and this is a goodie. I have it dog-eared, the page here, and this is a story that I read years ago, and it just gave me the willies, and I've read it a few times since, just because it's not scary, it's just eerie, and it has to do with the Men in Black. And it's a couple pages long, so it might be a couple minutes read here, but
just tuck in, kids.
For you listeners, now might be a good time to dim the lights and grab your bowl of popcorn and just hunker down and check this out. True story. So, in Scarsborough, North Yorkshire, so I think that's got to be in England somewhere. Yeah. There's a girl named Adele, and this happened in May of 1968. She was then a 16-year-old schoolgirl, and today she's a successful businesswoman and mother of two. She back then in '68, she answered a knock at the door and found herself looking into the face of an extraordinarily strange individual. He was tall and lanky, with a black suit and tie, white shirt, and very small pork pie-style hat, recalled Adele as she told the story in the 1990s. He had an extremely florid complexion and an almost insanely beaming smile. Although he was decidedly odd, I wasn't frightened of him at all. More plainly, I was just taken aback. After smiling madly at me for what seemed like ages, but probably was only a few seconds, the man's whole body jerked. And then he said, "Have you got insurance? Is it now?" His voice was most odd, like a robot's, jerky and without feeling. Looking back, I'd say it was more like a computerized voice. The sort that says, "Printer completed." Adele thought that there was something very peculiar about him, but she politely said that her parents would know about insurance, but that they were gone, so she suggested that he come back later to talk to them. At that, he seemed quite suddenly to sweat from every pore, and he removed his hat to wipe his forehead with the back of his hand, revealing a completely bald and totally white head. The florid complexion was now revealed to be a thick layer of badly applied stage makeup, some of which came off on his hand. Still smiling fixedly, he looked her in the eyes and said, "Can I see a glass of water?" Completely bemused but worried in case the stranger might collapse on the doorstep, she asked him to come in. He followed her with the strange jerky steps, his head thrown back just like a marionette walking. Adele noticed that his brand new shoes were on the wrong feet, and that his trousers and sleeves were far too short, revealing completely hairless, dead white skin. She showed him to a chair in the lounge and got a glass of water. When she came back from the kitchen, she found him standing in front of the fireplace, staring at the carriage clock on the mantelpiece. He said, "He made me so nervous that I started to blabber," she said. "I told him that the clock was my father's retirement present, which seemed to be some kind of huge revelation to him. He stared at me, still smiling, and said, 'It is your father's time? It is here and now?' Then he took the glass of water and just looked at it. I realized that when he had asked if he could see a glass of water, that's exactly what he was doing. He just wanted to see it. I was flabbergasted, and after scrutinizing it in a sort of polite way, he handed it back to me, having not even taken the smallest of sips. I began to think I was dreaming or had gone crazy, or that he had, but I never felt threatened in any way, just bewildered, completely bewildered. The visitor then stood staring at the clock, tapping it repeatedly and saying over and over again, 'Your father, his time, his time.' Turning round to face Adele with some difficulty, he had to use his hands to swing one leg around. He said, 'Watch the lights,' before patting the clock one more time and walking in the direction of the door. Adele got there just in time to open it for him, otherwise he may have simply walked into it. She followed him to the front door, babbled something about it being nice to meet you, but her visitor walked out without a word or a backward glance. Consumed with curiosity, as soon as she had closed the front door, Adele rushed into the front room to look through the window, but there was no sign of the weird stranger anywhere, although she had a clear view down the street in both directions. This was very strange because, as it was a very long avenue, there's no way that he could have disappeared from sight in such a short matter of time, but he had vanished. Adele told her parents that a strange insurance man, quote-unquote, had called, but added no other details because she felt unsure of her ground. They might have thought that she was exaggerating. And who wouldn't, she laughs. However, there were several unexplained incidents that happened in the wake of the visitor calling. The clock on the mantelpiece in the lounge mysteriously stopped working, although it had been working perfectly for 2 years up to that point. Adele's father put it away, only bringing it out again as an experiment when they, like millions of others, sat enthralled watching the debut of young Israeli psychic Uri Geller on the David Dimbley show in 1973. The viewers were invited to put metal objects or broken clocks and watches and whatnot near the TV set. A great deal of cutlery was bent and many timepieces rejuvenated. Adele's father's clock was among one of those items.
Whoa.
Another weird thing that happened almost immediately after the man had left the house, within 2 hours, several small but very bright white lights appeared and began to dance around the living room before exiting through the window as if it wasn't even there. Into the garden is where they disappeared. Adele was still on her own and thought it might be best not to mention them to her parents, but presumably they were what the man was referring to when he urged her to watch out for the lights.
Ew.
What?
Very odd story.
That is crazy.
So, Men in Black, it's in the ballpark of Men in Black. Now, she hadn't seen anything that, he told her not to speak of, but it's almost like he himself was the weird phenomenon, and he was dressed, kind of Men in Black like, and I mean, what do you make of that? Just the description of his appearance is eerie, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's one of the descriptions I've heard about these guys. There's something about them that's just off. It's not like an FBI agent coming to your house or a CIA agent coming to your house. There's something different about these guys.
Yeah. They just seem like they're not quite on the same playing field as everybody, as normal humans would be. I remember seeing, and I forget where this was, I want to say it was one myriad of TV shows involving this, and they had even had photos. And I know in this day and age, at this point, we could pretty much fake anything photo-wise, which is kind of neat to see that people who know what they're doing can actually see if it has been faked. They can actually bring up the artifacts and tell if it's an altered photo or not. So this was actually before, this is several years ago. This is 10, 15 years ago. This is before Photoshop kind of hit its stride now, but there was a photo, like old photo, like a Victorian era photo, they had photography back then, right? It was just rudimentary stuff, like cowboy days, where
it took like 30 seconds to take the picture.
Exactly. Everyone had to stand still for 3 minutes.
That's why no one's smiling.
As the silver plate had to soak up all the, and there's photos of these men in black.
Oh.
But they're dressed the same way. They had the same style of hat.
And they were in a different era in history.
Yes. They're in an older era of history. So for them, they're like too modern looking. Not just too far back, but now in this case, why would a guy who's wearing like a 3-piece suit or a sport coat, which didn't even exist in that time frame, and there's photo evidence of these men in black completely removed from a time period that they would belong in.
And they proved that photo hadn't been doctored.
Had not been doctored.
Huh.
And of course, it's the same thing. Like, oh, well, some guy had a weird fashion sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things again that's like there's so much to it, but then not enough to it yet.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%, Pat. Like, the movies themselves, they're fun, but to be what they're about, I want to see a Men in Black movie that's not a comedy.
Right.
Let's get into some of the weird. That is a movie right there, almost. Certainly a short story.
Yeah. In more recent years, there's actually some reported sightings of women in black. 2 men and 1 woman show up. So that's good. They're all about the gender equality in today's world. So that's good.
Got to make sure that they're being inclusive.
That's right. Persons in black. We should change it to not MIBs but PIBs. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I would want to know how many cases of UFO sightings there have been without Men in Black sightings.
Right. Yeah, the ratio there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there a certain type of sighting that comes attached to the Men in Black, or are they obviously they're not attached to every case. So is there a certain do the Men in Black have a certain interest in certain UFO sightings?
But how do they even find these people to approach them? Because in many cases, the people hadn't gone public at all. Yeah. Good old down to earth country, good old God fearing people, Bob and Linda. They see a weird craft, and the next day don't tell anyone. The next day, Men in Black show up at their front doorstep. How do they know that
so
Bob and Linda?
Obviously, Bob and Linda were observed somehow.
Right. It's weird.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember hearing somewhere, and this is on the other side of things, like that there's an active alien presence on the Earth. It's not debatable. And not only is there an active alien presence, but there's like dozens of races,
like species
of aliens, and that
they're populating.
Right. It's kind of similar to the Men in Black movie, that it's not only is it one, it's also several different versions of aliens. And so maybe it's just like if you happen to see this one specific kind, they have a protocol where they, if you only see the Greys, then the Greys have a culture where they're like, all right, send out the human robots that have backward shoes and don't know how to drink water.
Right. Well, it's an interesting one, and we thought it was about time to break that one out. So it kind of puts me in the mood to watch Men in Black, the movie, completely unrelated, but sometimes you just got to watch some aliens. So. Yeah.
I do like the scene of all those weird. They're kind of like centipede, cockroach, like bug aliens that are in the break room drinking coffee.
Yeah,
I love
just
that
hanging
one.
out. Yeah, but hopefully enjoyed the episode, everybody. So now we just have to go get ourselves some little voodoo dolls that Pat recommended, and give each other little massages and pats on the back with those.
$5 in our back pocket.
High fives.
All right. Well, thanks to freesound.org for a lot of the sound effects and music from today's episode. And again, the book that I read that little story from was called The Mammoth Book of UFOs by Lynn Picknett. And you can give us feedback, give us comments, give us reviews and whatnot. You can email us if you have suggestions for main mysteries of future episodes. That's paranormaldads@gmail.com. On Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Paranormal Dads.
You'll also be able to find any of our show notes at www.paranormaldads.com. All our episodes are there. Just find this episode number 26, and we'll have some links up there for all the things we talk about in this episode.
And a special shout out to all of our listeners. We also do have Paranormal Dads T-shirts available for purchase. Andy's wearing one right now.
That's right.
Please they look like those camp shirts you'd get at Camp Paranormal Dads.
Yeah.
But feel free to message us through Facebook, just like listener Griffin McKee did. Reached out, said, "Hey man, I want those shirts," and he himself now is the proud owner of some Paranormal Dads apparel. And, so let us know, message us, and with all the specifics, sizing, and addresses, and we can get you some Paranormal Dad shirts and all that fun stuff. For pricing and all that, just private message us through our Facebook page.
That's right. All right, gentlemen, thanks. It's been fun. It's been real. And we'll crank out another one for you all ASAP.
Aloha. Fourscore and 7 years ago.
I know, with my glasses.
Put on your monocle.
My hat comfy. It's still too tight. I'm wasting more time than if I just
And
know I
I'm
call
singing a song,
When will be the one
and I
who
don't
answers?
know the words.
Get your poking stick and bang on the ceiling.
Do it! Get the poking stick!
And then you're on
on
Reset.
Pop.
You're on Pop.
Pop
You too
goes
can have a
the
Paranormal Dads field journal. We'll just use your sticker and
That's
slap
right.
it on a little book.
I just slapped mine on people. Just walking through Walmart. Smack them in the face with a sticker.
Get him!
You're going to listen to us.